So, children's TV is kind of a hot topic. Some of it's very good, and some of it is downright garbage. But according to the National Institutes of Health, more than 86% of children under the age of 5 watch at least 30 minutes of TV every day. Some children watch with their parents and guardians present, and some watch alone. But if you have a child at home, odds are you'll probably catch them watching something you've never seen before. And if you think of yourself as a responsible caregiver, you probably want your children to watch programs that are appropriate and beneficial to them. I studied education and child development in college, and I've been working with children of all ages for several years. So I have a pretty good idea of what's popular with preschool-age children today, as well as what type of content is good for them and their growth as people. I recently watched and reviewed 12 of the most popular modern children's TV programs so that I can share my thoughts on them and maybe even inform some grown-ups on what the children in their care are watching every day. I'd like to note before we start that none of the shows I'm talking about today are terrible for a child when watched in moderation, and that my opinion is only mine, and whatever you want to show your child is completely fine as long as it doesn't hurt them. I might love or hate a show, and you might feel differently about it or have a different perspective. I totally welcome that, and I'd love to hear your thoughts too. With that, let's get started with the classic. Sesame Street is a classic children's TV show that you probably watched when you were a child. It features fluffy monsters as well as a diverse group of friends and neighbors. In this program, children learn about practical things that they may encounter in life, as well as letters, numbers, and social skills. The episode that I watched in my research was a recent one themed around summer camp. I thought this episode was wonderful, as it prepared children for what might be a new and intimidating experience. Additionally, this episode featured lessons on how chocolate is made, how to make oven s'mores, and a catchy song about the number 12. Education, 5 stars. Every episode of Sesame Street includes multiple lessons about various topics such as basic math, letter sounds, and problem solving. Modern episodes even include examples of appropriate use of technology for children, such as doing research or video chatting with a friend. I would say this program is highly educational. Entertainment, 5 stars. Even watching as an adult, Sesame Street is still funny and engaging. The humor is clean and appropriate, but still relatable to parents and older family members. This is a show that's fun to watch for the whole family. Moral lessons, 3 stars. In the episode that I watched for research purposes, I couldn't pick out any explicit moral lessons being taught, but there were more subtle lessons about kindness and helping others, such as when Cookie Monster made s'mores for a little girl and her friends, and when Grover's friends made him friendship bracelets. Diversity and inclusion, 5 stars. Sesame Street is known for being inclusive, and in this episode, like many others, it featured children and adults of different races and ethnicities, as well as some casual Spanish conversation mixed in with English. I also noticed something really subtle in this episode, which is when Cookie Monster goes to the chocolate factory, he refers to a masculine-looking adult working there as the chocolate factory person, not a man. This was honestly way more progressive than I was expecting, and I think it's cool that you're demonstrating how to use gender-neutral language when you don't know someone's gender. I would say this show was appropriate for 2 years and up, and the overall ranking is an S. Next up is Peppa Pig. Peppa Pig is a British animated TV show that first aired in the US in 2005. The show features whimsical animal characters going on adventures, having new experiences, and dealing with emotions. The episode I watched was called The Rainbow, and it focused heavily on learning colors, weather, and making the best of a bad situation. Education, 4 stars. The episode that I watched for research was less than 5 minutes long, but the creators packed quite a few lessons into those few minutes. The episode taught about 4 different colors and provided multiple examples of objects of each color. There was also a brief discussion of how a rainbow forms when it is sunny and rainy at the same time. Additionally, the children, Peppa and George, openly and appropriately expressed emotions such as frustration and sadness. My only gripe with this was that when the children became emotional, they relied on their parents to help them feel better. This isn't bad, but I think it would have been better if the show demonstrated some appropriate self-soothing techniques for children. Entertainment, 3 stars. Peppa Pig has a calm and comfortable vibe, and it's funny at times too. I can see this show being very entertaining for a preschool child, but there's not much going on that is entertaining for the parents and older siblings. So it's probably not the best choice for the whole family to watch together, but it is a choice. I do think it was funny when Peppa chastised the rainbow and called it cheeky. That was very clean and appropriate, but still funny at the same time. Moral lessons, 4 stars. The episode of Peppa Pig that I watched was not super explicit about its moral lesson, but I gathered a few more subtle ones, such as having patience when something goes wrong, because something good might come of it. This is shown a few times in the episode, but most notably when the rain stops and the rainbow disappears. George begins to cry when the rainbow disappears, but soon realizes that the rain has formed a mud puddle that's fun to play in. Diversity and inclusion, 2 stars. I think diversity in children's media gets a little more complicated when the show features exclusively animal characters. Of course, the characters are all different kinds of animals who get along with each other, but if this was intended to be a metaphor for all kinds of people getting along, it really misses the mark. Young children are very literal, and it's more valuable for them to see different people of different abilities, ages, genders, and ethnicities than it is to see pigs and rabbits being friends. I did notice something pretty subtle though, which is that Mummy Pig drove the family car, while Daddy Pig sat in the passenger seat. I don't know if it's just me, but if I were to imagine a nuclear family on a car trip, my mind automatically puts the dad in the driver's seat. So I thought it was nice that the mom was doing something that is more often thought of as the dad's job. I would say this show is appropriate for ages 2 to 5 years, and my overall ranking is a B. Yo Gabba Gabba. Yo Gabba Gabba is a live-action children's TV show that premiered in 2007 and is still in production today. The show was hosted by DJ Lance Rock and his dolls that magically come to life when he says the words Yo Gabba Gabba. The show is primarily musical, with singing and dancing making up most of the episode runtime. The episode I watched was called Eat, and it focused mostly on healthy eating and physical activity, as well as cleaning up after yourself and brushing your teeth. Education was surprisingly only 2 stars. This show appears to be educational on the surface, but I think that the lessons taught in the episode really missed the mark. For example, the characters notice their friend doesn't want to eat her snack because she's never tried yogurt before. They encourage her to give it a try with a song called Try It, You'll Like It. This is well-intentioned, I think, but I don't think it's the best idea to promise children that they'll like every food they try. Most people have foods that they really don't like, and that's okay. But I think it would be more appropriate to tell children, try it, you might like it, and maybe talk about how to be polite when you don't like the food. On a similar note, when one of the characters is eating his lunch, there's a song called Party in My Tummy, which tells the viewer that all the foods on your plate want to go to the party in your tummy. This is pretty ridiculous, as the preschooler watching probably knows that food isn't alive and won't be easily fooled by this trick. I think a much more appropriate message would be something like, food is good for you. It makes you grow big and strong. This is actually true and teaches the child the real purpose of eating well. Additionally, there was a bizarre segment of the show where a story was read aloud to the viewer about a little monster who goes fishing for something to eat for dinner. Every time he catches a fish, he throws it back, until he catches a car tire and serves it to his family for dinner. I really don't understand the purpose of this segment. It was just confusing. And if it taught any sort of lesson, it was probably something like, car tires are food and fish doesn't taste good. Entertainment, 4 stars. This show is really weird, like I said, but ultimately the music and dancing is pretty fun and encourages kids to get off the couch and dance along. The show is colorful and features a lot of different art styles and mediums. Overall, it's pretty fun to watch. Moral lessons, 3 stars. This was a tricky one to rate, as there were some very clear moral lessons, such as the concept of taking care of your environment by cleaning up after yourself, but the actual importance of this responsibility was not made clear. Cleaning up was framed as a fun activity rather than a personal responsibility. I really don't think Yo Gabba Gabba is fooling any kids into telling them that cleaning is fun, because children already know it's not fun. They do it every day. Diversity and inclusion, 3 stars. I think Yo Gabba Gabba represents people of all ages and genders and ethnicities fairly well, but there is a huge issue with the accessibility of the show. Physically disabled children might not be able to get up and dance as the show's hosts encourage them to. And not a single visibly disabled person was featured in the episode. So while this show is probably fun for able children, it's probably much less fun for children with disabilities. I'd say this show is good for ages 1 to 5 years, and my overall rating is C. It's time for Gabby's Dollhouse. Gabby's Dollhouse is a Netflix series aimed at young girls and features a black girl named Gabby who magically shrinks down so she can play with the cat-like creatures in her dollhouse. The episode I watched was the one with the Mermaid Sparkle Party, which focuses on an abstract concept called one's sparkle, which is defined as the thing that makes you the most happy. In this episode, one of the characters believes that he has no sparkle, and so he interferes with the plans for the Sparkle Party as he believes he cannot participate. Education, 1 star. This might seem harsh, but I think it's fair. There are only 2 brief moments in the 23-minute episode that I watched that would count as educational. One where the characters complete a pattern, and another where they place crystals of different shapes into the appropriately shaped holes. The problem with this is that the math skills they're attempting to teach are a bit below the typical abilities of the age group that I imagine would watch the show. I'll also note that there was a good example of problem-solving skills in the episode. When the squid character steals the mermaid's crystals, the other characters calmly approach the character to talk about the problem and learn the reason for his actions. Honestly, the show is mostly really overly cutesy, hyper-feminine nonsense. And that's not to say the femininity of the show is a problem. I just think that it really distracts from learning anything that might be happening. And there isn't much of that to begin with. Entertainment, 3 stars. I imagine the show is extremely popular with kindergarten girls because it plays on all of the current trends for young girls, like rainbows and sparkles and mermaids and cute animals. But honestly, I don't know how any adult could sit through more than 1 episode. There are no jokes or little touches thrown in for the parents to enjoy. It's basically just sensory overload the show. Moral lessons, 3 stars. The whole time I was watching the episode, I was waiting for something of value to happen. And I was surprised when in the last few minutes of the show, something good actually happened. There was a musical number about trying your best and practicing skills until you succeed. This was a shockingly good moral lesson to end on, but it was not related at all to the content of the episode. It was a complete non sequitur, and I really felt like the first 20 minutes were just wasting time until we could get to the part that's actually beneficial for children. Diversity and inclusion, 2 stars. This is probably surprising considering the main character is a black girl, but that's literally the only minority representation in the show. That would be fine, I guess, but the issue that I have is mainly that the main girl, Gabby, doesn't have any grand ambitions or talents. She's not super smart or especially kind. She's just a cute girl. Representation isn't just having diverse characters, it's showing those diverse characters in all kinds of occupations with all kinds of talents and skills and other good qualities. When children see someone they can relate to doing something great, it teaches them that they can do a great thing too. In Gabby's Dollhouse, I really don't see the main character as someone a child would aspire to be like. And that's fine, but I think it would be better if she were portrayed as really smart or ambitious or something along those lines. I would say this show's okay for 4 to 7-year-olds, and my overall rating is a D. PJ Masks. PJ Masks is a 2015 animated TV show that follows 3 children who are typical kids by day, but when they put on their pajamas at night, they transform into superheroes Owlette, Catboy, and Gecko. The episode I watched was one where their rival Luna Girl kidnaps the team's special animals and tries to manipulate them into stealing from stores. Honestly, the plot was a bit hard to follow, and the show is primarily in the action genre, so there's some mild violence and mean behavior from the characters. Education, 0 stars. I don't mean to be too harsh, but this show does not actually teach anything from what I've seen. You might argue there are some positive examples of teamwork, but ultimately there's no math, science, literacy, social skills, or anything else academic in the program. Entertainment, 3 stars. If this show has one thing going for it, it's entertainment value. The premise of the show is pretty creative, but at the same time, it's kind of lacking a coherent plot. If your kid really likes superheroes and action, they'll probably enjoy the show. It has a catchy theme song and the characters are pretty cool looking, but it's not exactly funny or super interesting from an adult's perspective. Moral lessons, 1 star. Again, I don't want to yuck anyone's yum, but this show doesn't have a clear moral lesson, or at the very least, the episode I watched did not. Maybe it's a stretch, but one might argue that the lesson is to obey the rules and laws so that you don't get beat up by superheroes. But again, this show is not really teaching anything that's applicable to a young child's life. Diversity and inclusion, also 1 star. The episode I watched only featured white, able-bodied children, as well as animal and robot characters. I would give this show 0 stars for diversity, but for one, I really can't tell what race the children are supposed to be. I think they're all white kids, but Owlette might be Asian. I can't tell for sure. Also, upon researching the show, I found out that there is an explicitly East Asian character named An Yu, but I'm pretty sure she's a villain character, and that kind of sucks for representation when all the heroes are white. I'd say this show is okay for ages 4 to 7, and my overall ranking is an F. I'll note here that I don't personally mind the show. I think it's just okay, and I imagine it's tolerable for parents to watch, but the fact that it doesn't teach anything at all deserves an F. Next up is Bubble Guppies. Bubble Guppies is a 2011 animated kids show about a group of very polite and diverse mermaid preschoolers. The episode I watched was one where the new character Zuli was introduced for the first time. The main plot of the episode takes place in a make-believe kingdom that is actually the children's playground and involves all of the children having special jewels which are sought after by an evil sea witch. The children eventually trick the sea witch into transforming into a tiny sea dragon, and they are able to reclaim their jewels with the help of their new classmate. Education, 2 stars. As the show is underwater themed, most of the educational content of the show is themed around ocean life. This is perfectly acceptable, but ultimately not many useful skills are taught, such as social skills or basic math, which can be more easily applied in a child's daily life. Entertainment, 4 stars. The episode that I watched had a very clear and creative plot, as well as some funny moments where both children and adults can appreciate it, such as the octopus pushing the sea witch around as she's stuck to a boulder. The music in the show is also fun and catchy, but sometimes a bit repetitive. Ultimately, kids and parents alike can enjoy the show. Moral lessons, 2 stars. If there was one lesson taught in this episode, I'd probably say that it's simply stealing is bad, which is definitely a good lesson for children, but I think it could have been improved with some guidance for children on the topic of sharing and taking turns if someone has something that you'd like to use. I would have loved to see the sea witch being taught how to ask if she can have a turn with the jewels rather than stealing them. Diversity and inclusion, 4 stars. This show has excellent representation of children of various races and appearances generally, as well as a male preschool teacher. Also, one of the children wears goggles, which I assume are meant to be like prescription glasses. If the show is missing anything, I would say it's disability representation. The kid with glasses is a cool touch, but I was kind of hoping for more in this area. I'd also like to point out that all of the children seem to have the same personality, which is a bit lazy. The kids are all very polite and respectful, which sets a good example, but that's kind of all there is to them. I'd love to see different personalities represented in the show. I'd say this show is good for about 2 to 5 year olds, and my overall ranking is a C. Next up is Daniel Tiger's Neighborhood. This is a PBS show based on Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. It focuses on a preschool-aged tiger named Daniel and his adventures and new experiences in a town full of people and animals. For this project, I watched an episode called Daniel Goes to the Hospital, in which Daniel has surgery on his ears. The episode explains what a visit to the hospital is like for children and helps to calm some anxiety that children have about going to the hospital. Education, I'm going with 4 stars. While there weren't any obvious math or literacy lessons in the episode, I believe the show was educational in a different way. It prepares children for real-life experiences and fairly accurately explains what a real hospital visit is like. There was also a live action segment at the end of the episode where an actual specialist gave a child a tour of a real pediatric unit. I really enjoyed this part because it prepares children for what real hospitals look like. This episode also subtly teaches children self-soothing strategies, such as hugging your favorite toy or listening to music to calm down. Daniel does not rely on his parents to feel brave. He finds bravery within himself, which is awesome for children. I'll also note that the parents and guardians in the show are very supportive of Daniel when he's nervous, such as when Daniel's grandfather gives him a music box to help him relax. Parents watching this show with their child might learn some ways to help their child in similar situations. Entertainment, 4 stars. The show has a calm and friendly energy, and it's very relaxing to watch. There was a good balance between silly and serious moments, as well as some interactive ones where Daniel poses a question to the viewer. The show is not too bright, loud, or flashy, which is good for sensory-sensitive children. Moral lessons, 3 stars. This particular episode of Daniel Tiger is the only one I've seen fully, so others might be different, but I didn't notice any explicit moral lesson in the episode. If a child were to take anything from this episode, though, I think it would be something about being brave in new situations and trusting in community helpers like doctors and nurses. Diversity and inclusion, 5 stars. Daniel Tiger's neighborhood includes animal characters living alongside humans, and the human characters within the show are all different genders, races, ages, and abilities. For example, Daniel's nurse at the hospital was a man, and the doctor was an East Asian woman. This is great representation, as it teaches a child that everyone is allowed to help others in a meaningful way. In the background of some scenes, you can also see children and families of different races, as well as a child using a wheelchair in the hospital waiting room. I'd say Daniel Tiger's Neighborhood is good for ages 2 to 6, and overall I give it an A. Next up is True and the Rainbow Kingdom. This is a Netflix children's show starring an 8-year-old girl named True and her cat companion Bartleby, who both live in the Rainbow Kingdom. In the episode I watched, the Rainbow King catches a cold, which changes the colors in the kingdom every time he sneezes. True finds out that she can cure his colds by retrieving a magic feather from the top of a mountain. But because the mountain is really steep and icy, True needs to go to the wishing tree and ask for wishes, which are little helpful creatures that can help her on her journey. Once she has her wishes, True and Bartleby climb the mountain and get the feather, which cures the king. Education, 0 to 1 star. This episode talked very briefly about how water contracts when it freezes and that heat melts ice, but those were the only educational moments in the show, and even those were not discussed in any more than 2 sentences at a time. This show has a great opportunity to talk about problem solving, as True encounters many obstacles on her journey, but most of her problems are solved with magic, which isn't practical for the child watching at home. I think the children won't learn too much from this show. Entertainment, 5 stars. I must say that if you want something fun to watch with your child as a family, this is a great choice. The show is funny, suspenseful, musical, and very pretty in its design. Even though it's a bit fantastical, the story makes sense and is easy to follow. Nothing about it was boring or overly childish or annoying. It was pretty good quality entertainment. Moral lessons, 3 stars. The main message in this episode was quite clear. It's good to do whatever you can to help another person in need. This idea of selflessness, or working hard to help others, is excellent for young children, but I think more practical examples of how to help others would be more appropriate. Taking the premise more literally, a child cannot usually help their friend get better when they're sick. That's a guardian or doctor's job. But children can help friends by telling an adult when their friend is hurt or in trouble. This doesn't necessarily make for great TV, but it's ultimately more practical for kids. Diversity and inclusion, only 1 star. Based on this episode, I'm slightly disappointed at the lack of representation in the show. The only human characters we see are True and her friend Z, who are both little white able-bodied children. This is fine, honestly, but I do hope that there are other human characters in other episodes that have different skin colors, abilities, or even different ages. It's a little odd that a rainbow kingdom that's so colorful in its creatures and architecture would have no people of color. It feels like a huge missed opportunity. Overall, this show is good for as young as 3 to maybe 7 years, and overall I'd give it a C. My next show was Doc McStuffins. Doc McStuffins is a Disney show about a kindergarten-age black girl who plays doctor with her magically sentient dolls and stuffed animals. The show is mostly animated, but the episode I watched also features interviews with real children and adults. In this episode, the doc teaches children healthy habits like washing your hands, drinking lots of water, and what to do when you're sick. As the episode was posted to YouTube in 2020, they also discussed how wearing a mask helps prevent the spread of germs. Education, 5 stars. This show, in my opinion, is a must-watch for young children, as the entire show is dedicated to teaching and reinforcing healthy habits with practical advice that children can easily follow. The doc talked to a little boy who was very busy all day and told him that before he gets too tired out, it's important to take a nap to give him more energy. She also talked to 2 little girls who were playing outside and taught them that they need as many glasses of water in a day as their age in years. Finally, she talked to a little boy who was getting over a cold and taught him to stay at home and avoid giving hugs and kisses until he gets better. The doc also talked to a doctor and nurse about wearing a mask when you or someone close to you is sick. Overall, this program was highly educational for young children. Entertainment, 4 stars. An educational show is nothing if it's not engaging for kids, and I'd say that Doc McStuffins is pretty entertaining. There's music and dancing, as well as interesting content for both children and adults. If anything, there was no storyline to this episode, but I think this might have been a special episode that's different from the usual ones, so maybe the other episodes do have storylines that children can follow, but I just haven't seen them. Other than that, the show was fairly engaging. Moral lessons, only 2 stars. I think that this show is not intended to teach things like good character values. The goal was more like staying healthy and feeling good physically. But I will say that they did emphasize taking care of the people you love by keeping your germs to yourself, which is a matter of kindness and consideration for others, so that counts for something, I think. Diversity and inclusion, 5 stars. This program included people of all different ages, races, and genders, which is an awesome start. But it also features a young black girl who aspires to be a doctor like her mom, who is also a black woman. This is so cool because it shows little girls and children of color that they can have those dreams too. The episode also featured a real black female doctor as well as a male East Asian nurse, which further inspires children of all types to aspire to great careers. If anything, the show did not feature any visibly disabled people, but the advice given in the program is applicable to people of any ability, so no child is fully excluded in this program. My age rating for Doc McStuffins is about 3+ years, and my overall rating is an S. Now let's talk about CoComelon. CoComelon is a Netflix kids show featuring a little white boy named JJ who looks like a baby but walks and talks like a preschooler. In this show, JJ goes on adventures and learns social emotional skills along the way. The episode I watched was split into 3 segments. In the first part, JJ and his family visit a wildlife rescue center. He learns how to make compromises with his family by doing what everyone wants to do for a little while each. In the next part, JJ's little Hispanic friend Nina is going to help her dad with the recycling, but she gets disappointed when they miss the garbage truck. They run to catch up with the truck and eventually get to put their recycling in. The third segment was about a little girl with glasses named Bella, who goes to a sleepover for the first time. She's worried that she'll miss her mom, but she practices positive coping skills and ends up having a really good time. Education, 3 stars. This show helps children identify and cope with difficult emotions, which is awesome for young kids, but I found that it was a tad unrealistic when everything worked out just as planned. For example, when Nina and her dad missed the garbage truck, it would have been more realistic if her father had told her they had to wait till next week. And the show could have dealt with the difficulty of not getting what you want and having to wait for it. Overall, not too bad though, as the children in the show express their emotions appropriately and often use self-soothing skills. Entertainment, also 3 stars. I expected this show to be terrible, as many parents online report it being completely unwatchable, but I found that it was pretty well balanced in terms of sensory input and was pretty pleasant and relaxing TV. I'd say it's probably very engaging for a young child, but not too interesting for adults. It's definitely not a great option for the whole family to watch together, but is tolerable in my opinion. Moral lessons, 4 stars. In this episode, JJ learned about having patience when the bears were in their caves at the Wildlife Center. Nina learned about perseverance when she missed the garbage truck, and Bella learned trust when her mother left her at her friend's house for the night and promised to come back in the morning. These are pretty good lessons for children of any age, but they weren't super clearly stated, and I can't be sure that a child would pick up on them and be able to apply them in their real life. Diversity and inclusion, 4 stars. I was pleasantly surprised that CoComelon shows families of all races being friends and being kind with each other. I was also happy that the character Bella is a child with low vision, but that's not actually addressed, which would have been cool. I would have liked to see more children and adults of different abilities, or even family members of different ages and races. I think Bella might be a mixed-race child due to her medium skin tone, but this is not confirmed in the show. Overall, the diversity is very good, but there is room for improvement. I'd say this show is good for ages 2 to 4, and my overall rating is a B. Now let's talk Paw Patrol. Paw Patrol is a Nick Jr. show featuring a little white boy named Ryder and his team of 6 rescue dogs who help the people in their town with a variety of problems. Unfortunately, I was unable to find full episodes of the show online, and I could only watch a compilation video. But I got the gist of the show, I think. When someone in Adventure Bay needs help, they call Paw Patrol, and Ryder and the dogs develop a plan, then drive some cool-looking vehicles and fix the problem. Education, unfortunately, is 0 stars. I watched about 20 or 30 minutes of scenes from Paw Patrol, and from what I saw, there was nothing beneficial to a child's social, emotional, or cognitive development. It was a lot of action scenes and using seemingly magical technology to solve problems. There's a huge opportunity in this show to demonstrate practical problem solving and conflict resolution, but this was not done. One might argue that Paw Patrol teaches teamwork, but often the character Ryder acts as the boss and the dogs all do what he says, which is not a good example of teamwork for children. Entertainment, only 2 stars. This show, if anything, is exciting and suspenseful for children, but anyone who graduated from preschool could see that the plot is the same every time, with only slight variations. As an adult, I find this show pretty intolerable to watch, but I can concede that it would be fun for small children. Moral lessons, 1 star. Nothing about this program teaches character values or good morals. In all of the scenes that I watched, I never saw anything about patience or kindness or respect or anything like that. To give the show a tiny bit of credit, I can say that it shows the characters selflessly helping others, but that's only because it's their job to do it. Diversity and inclusion, 0 stars. Yeah, this show features a little white boy and a team of mostly male dogs as heroes, and anybody else in the town is helpless to solve their own problems. In fact, most of the human characters I saw in the program were young, able-bodied white people. This does not inspire young children to be heroes in their own way, as for the most part, if they see a character they can relate to at all in the show, that character is a helpless person who needs rescuing from a little white boy or a dog. You might think this is fine if the viewer is a little white boy, but even white boys would benefit from seeing other kinds of heroes, as in real life, a hero can be any kind of person. I'd say this show's okay for ages 3 to 6, but my overall rating is an F. Lastly, we have Bluey. Bluey is an Australian children's program which features the main character Bluey, who is a little blue dog living with a younger sister Bingo, her mom, and her dad. The episode I watched was only 6 minutes long, and it was called Ice Cream. In this episode, Bluey and Bingo are out with their dad, and they get into several different dilemmas when they encounter an ice cream stand, such as asking for their dad to get them ice cream, getting carried away, and their ice cream melts before they can eat it, as well as sharing when their dad gives them his own ice cream. Education, 3 stars. This episode is not entirely educational, but it does discuss fairness as well as demonstrates appropriate turn-taking and sharing for children, which are important social emotional skills. The sisters have trouble when they both want to try each other's ice cream, but are worried that the other will take a bigger lick of ice cream than they'd like. In the end, both ice creams melt in the sun, and their dad gives them his own ice cream to share. With only one spoon, they decide to take turns and be fair to each other. Entertainment, 5 stars. This show is equally fun for both children and adults, as children will find the situations the sisters are in as relatable, and the adults will see the parents having realistic interactions and emotions that come up when dealing with troublesome kids. The episode made me laugh out loud when the girls were circling around each other trying to lick each other's ice creams. Classical music starts to play, and the water fountains comically dance as if the whole situation is a ballet. There is not a dull moment throughout the whole episode. Moral lessons, 4 stars. As I said earlier, the show encourages kindness towards friends and family through a lesson about sharing, as well as subtle reminders that shit happens and your ice cream melting in the sun isn't unfair, it's just life. Diversity and inclusion, only 2 stars. In a show about animals, as I said earlier, it's hard to have good representation. But I will say that Bluey's family being composed of 2 different kinds of dogs might be a metaphor for mixed-race families. Bluey is blue like her father, and Bingo is brown like her mother, which suggests that the sisters could be step-siblings, which is pretty cool. Other than this, I don't see any other examples of diversity, such as disabilities or age differences or different types of gender expression. But as I only watched 1 episode, these might be present in others. I'd say Bluey is good for ages 3 and up, and my overall ranking is a B. That about wraps up all 12 children's shows that I watched this week. If you have different opinions on these shows, please write me a comment. I would love to hear other perspectives on these programs, or you can let me know if there's a really popular show that I missed, and maybe I can review it in the future. I hope you and the children in your life are doing well and that you have a great day. Thank you for watching.